And that was the trailer for The King of Staten Island, the new Judd Apatow-directed and co-written film. I had to give a little update, I guess, in our group message this week. I said, because I'm guilty of it too. You got to remember, Judd Apatow is by and large a producer on the movies he works on. He didn't direct or write Superbad. Like there's a lot of movies that you probably think are Judd Apatow movies when really he just produced them. He was probably a script consultant, but he's not a credited director or writer. Some of the stuff he's directed, however, Knocked Up, the movie that put Seth Rogen on the map, Trainwreck, the movie that really helped put Amy Schumer on the map, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, he directed. He also directed, I don't know if you guys have probably never heard of this. I'm probably the only person in this video call and on stream that knows this movie, Celtic Pride, with Daniel Stern and Damon Wayans.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Really?
I believe he wrote that at least. I'm not sure if I don't think he directed it, but he wrote it. Celtic Pride, yeah.
I'm not saying that's a good movie because I haven't seen it in forever, but I have like a soft spot for that movie just because the premise is freaking hilarious.
I kind of enjoyed it. That's a movie where they kidnapped a Boston Celtics basketball player. Dan Aykroyd's in it. That was the other guy who was in it, Dan Aykroyd.
Okay, I know what movie we're talking about now. Yeah, all right.
They kidnap a player from the Utah Jazz because they're Celtics fans.
That's right. That's where the Celtic Pride comes in. Yeah, but it's been years since I've seen it, too. It's like one of those 90s comedies like Basketball nobody speaks of. At any rate, though, The King of Staten Island, that's what we're talking about, the new Judd Apatow movie. And I'm just going to start off by saying this, and I'll throw it over to you, Joe. This movie's quintessential Judd Apatow for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's long as hell. It's longer than it really needs to be. It's 2 hours and 16 minutes, number one. Number two, it's not so surprising that Apatow and Pete Davidson collaborated. I think some people were kind of off-put by it. I didn't know Pete Davidson much outside of name recognition. I know he had the thing with Ariana Grande. I know he was on Saturday Night Live. Like, I know tangentially about him. I've never seen much of his stand-up, not really enough to judge. But it's not really surprising that they work together. And I'll say this because, I mean, he loves finding like these burnout 20, 30-year-olds who are like living the life that they then become famous for in the public for making movies and doing routines on. Seth Rogen, Amy Schumer. He kind of writes around these people. These interesting kind of characters, these archetypes, if you will, or these people that like are almost like walking caricatures in a way. David Ehrlich, the critic I really respect from IndieWire, said it best. He said, if Pete Davidson didn't exist, it would be necessary for Judd Apatow to invent him. So with that, I'll throw it over to you, Joe. Some initial thoughts on King of Staten Island.
I mean, this is the only like real big negative I have is, this movie's way too long. Every Judd Apatow movie is. Like, Funny People is almost 2.5 hours long. And with this movie, I remember watching it, and I'm like, this has been really good. And, like, I'm like, I'm sure there's only, like, 20 minutes, 30 minutes left. It felt like this film flew by. I moved my mouse because I was watching this on my computer, and it said there's an hour and 12 minutes left. I'm like, oh, shit, all right. I'm like, what else is going to happen in this movie? And that leads into my other criticism with the movie, and I'll go in the positives, and that is, there's a lot that happens in this movie that could be easily cut out and it wouldn't affect the plot at all. And then that also kind of leads into stuff happening in this movie. For instance, Marisa Tomei's character, who plays Pete Davidson's mom in the movie, she kind of has this reaction to Bill Burr and Pete Davidson that just kind of comes out of nowhere, especially the Bill Burr's character. And it just felt like it came out of the blue. And I was just like, I never saw for a moment you guys like being angry at each other, because we spent so much time with like other like BS that like Judd Apatow probably focused on for a joke and made this film even unnecessarily long. Other than that, though, I mean, this to me was I think this is actually great because I can't remember the last time we reviewed a comedy on this show and I actually laughed at the movie. And this is one of them. To me, this is to me one of Judd Apatow's best movies. For me, my favorite, I think, still is either Knocked Up or Funny People. This is close, though, to amongst them. I mean, he hasn't directed many films, but in terms of films that he's even just written, this is one of my favorite ones. I think Pete Davidson is somebody who has been watching him on SNL and also like some of his stand-up, especially his most recent Netflix one. I thought he actually did a really good job here showing some drama chops. It's not Oscar-worthy. It doesn't come close to that, but it definitely made me go, Okay, wow. I'm actually excited to see this kid in future upcoming projects that I know he's in, like James Gunn's Suicide Squad and other movies as well. Even Bill Burr, I thought, once again, I mean, like, guy's a comedian and whatnot. He did really good in this as well. I saw that he can't go 2 hours without mentioning Boston, which sucks, but, that's Bill Burr for you. The rest of the cast is great, too. Marisa Tomei is great. Steve Buscemi, who has a minor role in this film, but when he's on screen, he's very sweet. He's a very sweet character, and like just seeing Steve Buscemi in a film in 2020 kind of just like made me a little bit happy because it's been a while since I've seen him in a good movie, I should say too. Dom, what do you think?
I am so glad we watched The Lovebirds before watching this movie, because I think 10 minutes into King of Staten Island, I was a little like afraid at first that because the Lovebirds have these moments. It's essentially just like two funny people like being funny and improvising jokes. Like you can tell like, oh yeah, they just riffed for like 30 minutes and then the editor just cut it down to like a 90-second joke.
Yeah.
Something like that. And there were elements of that here, but that wasn't like the whole movie, right? Or rather, I should say, the movie worked around that as opposed to just being that. And you easily see this in a lot of like the last 10 Will Ferrell movies as well. And I think that's because I think it succeeds so well here, King of Staten Island, because it takes itself seriously. It takes itself, to a better place because of it. And because everyone is, balancing, every character here is balancing between, actually playing a character, like actually acting, but also just being completely true to life. Like we mentioned earlier, like Bill Burr talking about Boston. Yeah, of course, that gets annoying after a while from like all his other appearances. And if you're a Bill Burr fan, but hey, that's who he is, and he's able to utilize it here in a way. I mean, he's a fireman first and foremost, right? So playing a fireman in this movie, so of course he's gonna talk about that stuff. It works very well. Steve Buscemi, he was himself a fireman. He's actual a fireman in real life. Worked the pit and after 9/11, during 9/11 as well. So he brings that gravitas and that sense of seniority so well. And Pete Davidson is he's mostly just playing himself,
Yeah.
which is true for literally every Pete Davidson role ever. But he's just one of those people that can do that so freaking well. At least in a way that's just really entertaining and really, really funny to watch. And as Joe said, it's just so refreshing to see yet another comedian prove the adage that, if you treat a comedian seriously as opposed to just being the clown, they'll give you some good stuff.
Yeah.
And that goes from Robin Williams to Eddie Murphy to up and down the yeah, exactly. Up and down the comedian Hall of Fame there. It rings true. And Adam Sandler with Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
If you treat them seriously, yeah, exactly. And if you treat them seriously, if they take the project seriously, and they're not just goofing about, then it turns into a satisfying project. That being said, yeah, it's a little bit too long. I should say this. It's that weird problem where it's not long enough, because I kind of wanted to like have more moments with these characters.
Yeah.
But they're kind of wasted on, I don't know what it is. It's hard to put a finger on it exactly.
There's this whole like restaurant thing that Pete Davidson works at. And like by the end of the movie, I was like, you know what? That whole plot line could have been cut out. Like, none of that mattered. Like where he works as a busboy at the restaurant. There's even a point where like I thought the film was about to get dark for a second. His friends do a robbery, and it gets.
I was just gonna say that robbery scene. That robbery scene is weird.
Yeah.
It comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't really have much of a lasting edge to it. I'll say this: I wouldn't go as far as what Joe is saying. I think it's one of Apatow's best. Because I think I would even say I enjoyed Trainwreck a little bit more than this one. But I will go with this though. It's a movie elevated greatly by a lot of really strong supporting performances. Particularly the one that won my heart right from the beginning was Marisa Tomei.
Yeah.
I think Marisa Tomei brings a sassiness and a sweetness to both. She's a very pragmatic, like middle class mother. Like she has that sensibility to her. And I think her and Bill Burr even too have really strong chemistry. It was interesting to see Bill Burr almost in a way play against type, especially in the first scene he's in. Play against type. I thought he sold that extremely well. The arguments seem
like on stage and everything, and any characters he plays, or just a real like jerk. But like no, he's actually like trying to be like a sweet guy that does have anger issues, but he pulls it back.
Yeah, and I thought that was really strong too. I also really like, and I know it's nepotism to the nth degree over here, but honestly, the more I see her, the more I do like Judd's daughter, Judd Apatow, who plays Scott, Pete Davidson's character's sister.
Yeah.
I like Judd Apatow. I think she has a naturalism that you can't teach. I think, especially in her scenes with her brother, with Pete Davidson, and even in college, she has a really kind of believable naturalism to her performance that I think does a movie like this really well. And the elephant in the room, Pete Davidson, I think he was pretty good here. Again, he's not being greatly artistically challenged. This movie's kind of a semi-biographical take. He lost his father in 9/11. His father was a firefighter. So I don't think it's entirely a real stretch of imagination for him to play this character, but I thought he does well.
He's a major pothead in real life. He's like self-admitting it all the time.
Yeah, and I think even he would tell you the most accurate scene in the whole movie is when his sister's getting ready to leave for college, and then his mom comes, Marisa Tomei comes and says, "Your sister's leaving for college," and he's getting high watching SpongeBob. He goes, "Oh, cool, this is almost over." I mean, that's what I like. This movie has really good performances that make up for a lot of flab. Like you said, his busboy job, the robbery scene. Yeah. I thought there was a lot of external showiness, for lack of a better term, in this movie. A lot of strange asides that didn't give us a whole ton of information about that could have been used to give us more information about the characters. I thought that was what bogged the movie down mostly.
For me, I thought it took forever, because they're introduced early on, and when they go to a minor leagues Yankees game, they're introduced early on. The whole fireman crew, like the reason, like the trailers with them the entire time. You're thinking like Pete Davidson, he's gonna like, because his dad passed away, like he's gonna learn to appreciate Bill Burr, because he kind of becomes like this whole like he's gonna find his purpose in life, because every Judd Apatow movie is about somebody trying to like find their purpose or getting their shit together. He's going to find his way with the firefighter crew there. But they don't come in until, like, near the end of the second act into the third act. And you're just like, whoa, like, we introduced them, like, within the first, like, 20 minutes with this baseball game. And you don't see them for the longest time other than Bill Burr. And it's just like, you have all this.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
You have all these other plot lines that we were talking about. Even like his sister kind of gets shafted, where I thought like she's gonna get more time, because they have this really touching moment where he attends a college party with her, and he's kind of just like understanding like he can belong somewhere, but then like she gets shafted somewhere. Dom, what were you saying?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. That's what I was saying, is that I kind of wish we did have more time, but really that's just the fault of the script, like just being so weirdly paced. Why would you introduce this element so late? Also, we didn't wrap this up, or maybe that could have taken some. I mean, again, you would have to do like hard stopwatch timing in the editing room to try and fix this, but it's such a shame, because this movie was really giving me Saturday Night Fever vibes, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't know, have either of you guys seen that movie? It's the John Travolta disco movie.
It's been years for me.
I freaking love that movie, because it kind of follows a lot of the same beats, where it's like, this kid, or this guy, John Travolta, is just kind of wandering about. It's kind of a dead end job, not a lot of prospects. It comes from a poor family. But then he finds a place, well, actually different from King of Staten Island, that John Travolta finds a place to actually be himself, which is the disco, and he can dance. But Pete Davidson doesn't even freaking have that. And so, I mean, that's cool that they're able to explore that as well. But it's interesting, because I get that the movie is Pete Davidson wandering through life and him kind of meandering through it, but it felt like the movie was meandering in a bad way. I don't mind. I wouldn't mind a project where it's just kind of a character and their thoughts, and it feels like it's meandering, but it's able to be engaging. But this movie is not it, just because it tries to be a more traditional movie with the firefighters and that element to it, and then the sister and all that, and his girlfriend, played by Belle Powley, who was in White Boy Rick. And looking at her, I'm like, man, her eyes are huge and bulging. Almost kind of looks like Pete Davidson to an extent, who also has like these weird bulging eyes. Pete Davidson's friggin' weird, man, and I friggin' love it. But yeah, he's
unique.
Yeah, he's unique. I mean that in a good way.
That's what it is. No, that's what it is with Pete Davidson. Like, people are like, how did this guy, like, I saw a bunch of comments online. They're like, how did one of the least talented SNL cast members get, like, become the next star? And I said, look at the guy. The guy is like, he might not be the most, like, you could make the same argument for Seth Rogen. You really could. Seth Rogen doesn't do anything revolutionary, but he's a unique character. Like Pete Davidson too. He's got a long, lanky look to him. He's got 40 plus tattoos. You know what I mean? He's had kind of a hard knock life, at least in the beginning. He's got Crohn's disease. That's a great, totally off topic, but I love that. I love the scene my favorite line in the whole movie. I got to be honest. My favorite line in the whole movie is at the baseball game when he tells him about Crohn's disease, and he goes, "Just trying to spread awareness." That had to be my favorite line of the whole damn thing. But no, it's worth mentioning, though. I wish we would have gotten more time. And it's not only because it's part of the reason, yes, he's so good, but it's not the only reason. More time with the firefighters and Steve Buscemi. Mm-hmm. Because that was also such an integral part of the trailers, that you were thinking that this was going to be more of like an instrumental part of the movie. And it shows up, I think, at like an hour and 40 minutes. And it's a 2 hour and about 16-minute film with credits. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, because you can actually be cognizant of the runtime. It's not like you're watching it in the theater. Like, I'm like, man, they're introducing this late. And the worst part is, though, is that, like, the scenes with the firefighters are some of the funniest stuff. Like, when he's washing the truck and he's like, why do we even wash the truck? What, you're just going to get fire on it, And,
but, dude, that was a great moment because, I mean, it is a great moment because, like, you're like, that's exactly what a freaking kid would say, a child would say. Why do I have to make my bed? I was just going to get dirty again tomorrow or tonight. I'm like, that's freaking awesome. And it sucks that we don't get to experience that more. And I understand the critique that, that has the potential to be cliche. I completely agree. But then don't tease us so hard with this element and this drive.
It could be, yeah. I mean, like we pointed this out with Just Mercy. Like, yeah, it could be, by the books, cliche, whatever you want to say. But if you do it good, and this movie was doing those parts really good, we won't mind it. Like, and this is, and like I said, I know, like, I said this is one of my favorite Judd Apatow films, like, and it's like probably up there for me. But like the way I always look at all of his films have this problem. So it's just like they're kind of just stacked evenly with each other. It's just like, well, I like this one more because of what Steve was saying. Like, the supporting characters have great moments that, like, it kind of just elevates it above everything. I like all of Judd Apatow's directed films. They're all good to me, but what stops them from being great is literally just the problems we all saying about this film in particular, because I find that in every film of his.
I'll say this. I was going to say this, too. Yeah. I'll add this about that robbery scene, which I really think comes out of nowhere. The fault of that is, like, think back to the opening scene. I know it was a long time ago, 2 hours and 16 minutes ago. But think back to the opening scene, though, when he's barreling down the road, and all of a sudden it opens on kind of a dark note, with him closing his eyes on the road and narrowly avoiding a collision that might have killed him. Like, I can't help but feel, and this is probably my biggest criticism with the movie, which adds to its length. My biggest criticism with the movie is, I think initially, somewhere down the road, it might have got lost in translation, but I think this movie was supposed to be a little bit darker conceptualized. It was supposed to get into Pete Davidson's maybe like personality disorder or depression or suicidal thoughts in a way, and translate that into his character. That would have made, if that would have been better contextualized, it might have made that robbery scene more impacting because of doing stupid, impulsive things like his character's prone to doing. I think that was a major missed mark of this movie, is that it doesn't dive deep enough into Scott, the character of Scott, and his emotional state.
That actually reminds me of Silver Linings Playbook, actually, where
Bradley Cooper's
all
character.
like yeah, exactly. Bradley Cooper's character, and even Jennifer Lawrence, and I think even Robert De Niro, like all the characters, like they had like some level of mental issue,
Yeah.
or even just just general trauma or depression or what have you, some kind of mental illness.
That's a good comp.
But but it's like then the movie kind of morphs halfway through, and then it becomes all about the dancing, and then it kind of wraps up only it's like very sweetly and very neatly, and I'm like, wait a second, I thought this was about like mental illness, and they never touched that again, or something, or at least it was really like hinting towards that, but like the trauma is like magically solved, I guess, through the art of dance. I don't know, it just didn't feel. My problem with that movie as well is that it just didn't feel wrapped up. It felt, I would say, King of Staten Island is even more weirdly paced, where that just feels like there's a big issue there with how they were trying to set up and deliver like moments. But even then, it shares that same issue.
Because it acknowledges it. I mean, in the opening scene, and then even that robbery scene. I thought if that robbery scene was even if he was remorseful at the end, like Scott, even if he was remorseful about like I do stupid things sometimes, I'm impulsive, I don't know why. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a condition of even depression, and even a personality quirk or a personality disorder too. And that was my biggest misgiving with the movie is that, and you don't realize it until after you like digest it. Like after it's done, you're kind of in the high from watching it. But when you really think about it, it's like there's a handful of things with this movie that could have been better. But I will say I still would give it a positive rating. I still think it's worth watching. I think it's an enjoyable film. I think it's a good showcase for Pete Davidson, and I love the supporting performers. Buscemi, Tomei, Burr, they're really good. Even Judd Apatow. I think they're all really good. I should just tack it on right here to begin with. I'd give it 3 out of 4 stars. I'd say it's worth watching. It's like I said, I'll go back. I'll come full circle. It's quintessential Judd Apatow. That's pretty much what it is. And there's nothing wrong with that, although I will go back to Joe's point just briefly and say I would consider Knocked Up great. I do think Knocked Up is a damn good movie.
Oh, yeah.
I will bump that up a level. I do think Knocked Up was a pretty well played film. Joe, I'll go into your final thoughts with King of Staten Island.
I mean, you literally just nailed everything I just want to say about this movie. I mean, it's great. I wish this was on a streaming platform because I feel like more people will watch it if it was rather than being on video on demand. But I mean, hey, if you're stuck at home with a significant other or a group of people, I think this is well worth like having a little small get together of 10 people and watching a movie together. I think this is a great one. I had a lot of fun watching this. I actually I streamed it through Discord with a friend because I didn't want to watch it by myself because I just was like, screw it, you want to join me to watch this? And I streamed it through there, and they watched it with me, and even they had a good time. It was a good movie.
Sounds fun.
Bill Burr, everybody, as you were saying, Davidson, Tomei, everyone. They give great performances here. Even if like some of them are tacked into like who they are as a person, I still think like they do it really good. For me, it's also 3 stars. Practically every Judd Apatow movie is 3 stars, except for Knocked Up and Funny People, which are like 3.5 stars for me. I would still consider like those his best films, but for me as of now, and this is still like pretty recent hot take, this is my 3rd favorite movie he's made. I actually really like this one a lot. If we do like some type of, I don't know, top 10 list, if that many films actually come out that we like, this will probably be on there for me.